You keep calling them cold, but that's not the whole story. What you're feeling might not be rejection in the simple, obvious way. It might be what happens when someone wants love, but panics the second it starts to feel real. And if you've been loving an avoidant partner, you probably know the emotional whiplash by heart. One day they're warm, open, almost all in. The next day they pull back, like closeness itself became too loud. And the hardest part is this. You start shrinking yourself just to keep the connection from disappearing. Picture this. You finally get a deep conversation, a real moment, something honest. Maybe they admit they miss you. Maybe they soften. Maybe for one night it feels easy. Then the next morning, their texts go flat. They get busy. They need space. Suddenly you're lying in bed, replaying every word, wondering if you asked for too much, felt too much, needed too much. The emotional cost is brutal because you're not just missing them. You're carrying the confusion of someone who reaches for you and retreats from you in the same breath. Here's what's really happening. A lot of avoidant behavior isn't about a lack of feeling. It's often about what closeness activates inside someone. The very thing they want can also feel like the very thing that threatens their freedom, control, or inner stability. That doesn't mean you're supposed to overfunction, over-explain, or become a full-time emotional translator. It means, if you want to cope without losing yourself, you need to understand the pattern for what it is. So let's break it down. 5 reasons an avoidant partner can feel impossible to love, and how to stop turning their distance into a verdict on your worth. Number 1. Distance is often their way of regulating, not just rejecting. Most people think pulling away means they don't care, but often it means they care and don't know how to stay calm inside that caring. For some people, emotional closeness doesn't feel soft. It feels like standing too close to a speaker that's turned all the way up. Their nervous system reads intimacy as pressure, obligation, or overwhelm, even when nothing dangerous is happening. So they create space to get their internal volume down. That's why chasing rarely works. The more you push for reassurance in the moment they feel flooded, the more they experience connection as something they have to escape. You're not dealing with a heart made of stone. You're dealing with a system that often confuses closeness with loss of control. And that's where it gets complicated, because the next pattern makes this even more confusing. Number 2. They may show love in ways that don't feel like love to you. Avoidant partners often protect themselves by keeping emotion indirect. So instead of saying, "I need you," they fix things. They send a practical text. They remember some tiny detail. They sit beside you, but struggle to say what's happening inside. Their love can come out wearing armor. And if you only recognize softness in one form, you'll miss the quieter versions entirely. That doesn't mean you should settle for breadcrumbs and call it romance. It means part of coping is learning the difference between emotional illiteracy and emotional absence. You're not crazy. You're reading a language that was never taught in plain words. But here's the part people miss. Even when they do care, your pain can still trigger the very thing that makes them disappear. Number 3. Your need for closeness can accidentally activate their threat detection. When you say, "Can we talk?" you may mean, "Come closer." What they may hear is, "You're trapped. You're failing. You're about to be consumed." That's not rational in the clean, logical sense. It's pattern-based. If they learned early that emotional demands came with guilt, criticism, chaos, or suffocation, then intimacy can carry the scent of danger long after the original moment is gone. So when you protest, pursue, or ask for reassurance with urgency, they may not respond to the words. They respond to the alarm underneath them. Like a smoke detector going off because of steam, not fire. Their system reacts first and interprets later. You're not too much. You're touching an old bruise they never learned how to name. But if you stop there, you'll still blame yourself, because the next mechanism is the one that keeps you hooked. Number 4. Intermittent closeness is powerful because your brain treats it like a reward chase. This is why loving an avoidant partner can feel strangely addictive. Not because the relationship is deep in some magical, fated way, but because unpredictability hijacks attention. When affection comes in flashes, your brain starts scanning for the next hit. One vulnerable conversation can keep you emotionally invested for days. One warm look can make you excuse a week of distance. It becomes less like stable love and more like waiting for a message from a locked door. That inconsistency can light up dopamine and anticipation in a way that feels intense, even meaningful. But intensity and safety are not the same thing. You're not deeply fulfilled. You're often becoming bonded to relief. And once you see that, another truth comes into focus. One that might sting before it frees you. Number 5. Coping stops working when you make their pattern your identity. This is the trap. You become the understanding one, the patient one, the one who knows not to ask at the wrong time, not to expect too much, not to push. Slowly, without noticing, your emotional life starts orbiting their capacity. You become an expert in their exits and a stranger to your own needs. And yes, compassion matters, but self-erasure is not compassion. It's survival dressed up as maturity. You're not asking for too much. You're often asking the wrong person to give it in the right season. The moment you stop measuring your worth by their availability, the whole relationship looks different. And that leads to the beautiful contradiction. Here's the beautiful contradiction. Avoidant people can feel deeply and still struggle to stay. They can crave intimacy and fear it. They can miss you honestly and still go silent. They can want love without yet knowing how to carry its weight. That doesn't make them villains. It also doesn't make you responsible for translating every silence into hope. Sometimes the person who seems least affected is the one working hardest not to feel too much. Sometimes the person asking for space is not empty, but overcrowded inside. And sometimes your biggest act of love is refusing to call unstable closeness a soulmate bond just because it hurt beautifully. Now for the grounded caution. Understanding avoidant behavior can help you stop personalizing every shift, but it can also become a trap if you use insight to tolerate chronic deprivation. There's a difference between giving someone room and abandoning yourself in the process. If coping turns into constant self-censoring, if you're always managing the temperature while your own emotional world goes cold, that's not wisdom. That's slow self-betrayal. A gentler reframe is this. Stay curious about their pattern, but stay loyal to your own reality. Notice what happens in your body after the conversations. after the silence, after the half repair? Do you feel grounded? Or do you feel like you're always auditioning for emotional safety? That question matters more than almost any explanation. Because in the end, love is not supposed to feel like decoding a disappearing signal every day of your life. Real connection might still be complex, imperfect, human, but it should not require you to become smaller just to make it last. The right kind of love doesn't punish your tenderness. It gives it somewhere to land. So maybe this is your reminder. Their distance is information, not your identity. Their silence is a pattern, not proof that you are forgettable. And your longing to be met does not make you needy. It makes you honest. So tell me in the comments, team stay and understand, or team step back and protect your peace? And if this hit home, watch the next video on why anxious and avoidant relationships feel so magnetic in the beginning and so exhausting in the end. That's where the whole pattern finally clicks.